Since the dawn of time, humankind has sought new ways to entertain themselves and others. From the earliest days when fire changed the way humanity functions, all the way to modern times, we seek games to both amuse and learn. Libraries have long been the home for scholars and everyday people who enjoy the quiet places where learning about topics, both well-researched and the fantastical fiction combine. Themes are important, as this is a fantasy and science fiction-based channel. It only makes sense to combine the love of the library, the love of the game, and the love of the genres into one tag for the ages. Lorekeeping has been fundamental in passing useful and necessary information from generation to generation. So today, we shall explore an all-new book tag called The Lorekeeper's Library. Shh! We're doing a new book tag. Okay, everybody, welcome back to BooKTube. We're doing a brand new thing here today. We are calling it the Lorekeeper's Library book tag. Now, you know I like to do these tags from time to time because they're a lot of fun, but mostly I like creating these tags myself because it engages my creative juices a little bit, and we're going to talk about that today at the end of the episode in our One for the Road segment. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it with our first prompt of the day. The first category today in our Lorekeeper's Library tag is going to be called the Fantasy Book Stack. Now, this has two different prompts, and the first prompt is, which fantasy world is your favorite? Okay, for me, I thought about it a little bit, and I kept coming back to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There is so much I love about the wizarding world. I played Hogwarts Legacy, the video game, and I swear I spent more time just screwing around in Hogwarts than I did doing any of the quests right off the bat, because it was just like a dream come true to run through all the corridors, to see the staircases moving around, to find the hidden rooms and the hidden chambers. I loved it a ton. Then I think about places like Diagon Alley or Nocturne Alley, and you know I would probably be in Nocturne Alley somewhere, but I just love it all a ton. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the ugly, there's every element about the wizarding world is there for somebody who likes the fantastical. That's going to be my first answer to that prompt of the fantasy book stack. The magical world I'd like to live in, the wizarding world of Harry Potter. And the next prompt in the fantasy stack section is, which magical system would you like to learn? Okay, so obviously there are hundreds, if not thousands, of potential answers to this question. I wanted to come at it with a little bit of a unique answer, and one that I don't think anybody else will come up with, and that is divination, courtesy of Alex Verus in the Alex Verus series by author Benedict Jacka. Now, divination is a really cool power. Alex Verus is our urban fantasy hero, and he can see all kinds of potential futures laid out visually in front of him and select the one that leads him to the goal that he's trying to achieve. Now, this is really cool because he could have 1,000,000 to 1 odds against something happening, but he'll find that once in a million chance, and that's the direction his divination power will take him. So, of course, I could have picked superheroes. I could have put Gandalf in here. I could have done Dumbledore, whatever, but there's just something cool about the divination power of Alex Verus to be able to choose your own destiny. I don't know, maybe I read too many Choose Your Own Adventures when I was a kid. That's my answer for that question. Alex Verus, divination. Let's move on to the next prompt. So our second category today is called Sci Fi Shelves. And the next prompt is, what is your favorite science fiction technology? Now, this one, again, if you read a lot of sci-fi, it's probably going to be something like, spaceships. Maybe some people might say lightsabers. I'm not sure. But something came to mind to me relatively quickly, and that is from the book Hyperion, and we are talking about Farcaster's technology. So what's a Farcaster? It's basically a teleporter, but it works a little bit different than something you may have seen in Star Trek, right? So in Star Trek, they're down on the planet. They're going to beam them up. They're going to beam beam them down, and it's sort of like a planet to starship type of a transport. In Farcaster technology, we are hopping across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. And we have a character here in Hyperion who has a house that has Farcasters all over the place. So his house is essentially all over the galaxy. You want to go to one part of the galaxy, you go to that room. You want to go to another part of the galaxy, you go to that room. Farcaster technology. That is my favorite science fiction for this prompt today. Let's move on to the next one. And of course, if you like this type of content, if you like book tags, if you like talking about fantasy and science fiction, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Lit RPG, we do all that here too. Consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I also want to say a special thank you to our patrons of the channel. Actually, I think they're called patrons, but the website's Patreon. Whatever it's called, it's in the description below. You've seen it before. Also, we do have channel memberships available. Patreon and channel memberships are literally less than $2 a piece, so please go explore those if you are so interested. All right, let's move on to the next prompt. The next category is called Epic Battles Archive, and the prompt is, which book had the most epic battle scene? Okay, there is a clear and obvious winner for me in this one. The book that had the most epic battle scene, without a doubt, is The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. You know that already. The battle I'm talking about in particular is called Fiery Absolution. Now, The Lonesome Crown is book 3 in his 5 Warrior Angels trilogy, but I have to tell you, I've read so many books, nothing comes close to the batshit bonkers battle scene that is Fiery Absolution. I don't even know how many of the pages it takes up. This is a beast of a book, but Fiery Absolution is huge. It just defines epic. It redefines epic for me, because I thought I knew what a battle scene was. I thought actually in book 2, The Blackest Heart, we are going to get the craziest battle scene ever in the series. Nope. Fiery Absolution. An easy answer to that question. Let's move on to the next one. And the next category is book to TV or movie catalog, with the prompt being, which fantasy book deserves a movie or TV adaptation? Again, so many amazing series out there could be made into movies. I personally am more of a series person, right? When I think about if they were going to make A Song of Ice and Fire into a movie versus the amazing HBO Max series that they did, I'd have to say I'd rather have an adaptation. Same with Shogun, right? I mean, if they tried to cram a 1,200-page book into an hour and a half or a 2-hour movie, I don't think it would work. So in this particular case, I'm going to go with a trilogy, and it is going to be the Greenbone Saga. And this is something that I would love to be seen made as a television adaptation or streaming service adaptation. Wow, I can only imagine what Max or Netflix or Apple TV would do with a property like the Greenbone Saga. It's got everything. It's got family drama. It's got action. It's got a really cool and intricate magic system that really anybody that wants to watch a cool crime drama play out, they're going to understand the magic system in about 2 seconds. The Greenbone Saga. I'm a huge fan of Fonda Lee. That's what needs to be made into an adaptation. I hope, there's been kind of rumblings and murmurings over the years that they've been looking at it. Maybe they'll do a screenplay. Who knows? I suspect in the next few years, we're going to find out some more about the Greenbone Saga being adapted. I'm sure hoping so. Let's move on to the next tag. Now, this next category is called The Villain's Vault. And there's going to be 2 prompts in this category. The first one is, who is your favorite fantasy villain? All right, so my favorite fantasy villain. Again, so many to choose from. Something that came to mind for me right away as I was creating this tag was the Dresden Files. Now, within the Dresden Files, there are a lot of really cool villains, but I think the one that sparks my interest the most is Nicodemus Archuloni. Now, I don't know if it's pronounced Archlone or Archloni, whatever. I think Dresden Files readers know I'm talking about Nicodemus. This is a guy who's basically hosting a fallen angel within his body, and he's a planner, and he's sophisticated, and just has everything laid out in ways that our main character, protagonist, hero, Harry Dresden, tends to overlook and finds himself in a bit of trouble because Nicodemus seems to usually be one step ahead of him. Usually, not always, but Nicodemus is great. When he comes on the page, I know a lot of you readers just absolutely go, yeah, it's a Nicodemus book or a Nicodemus chapter. That's my answer for this prompt. Let's move on to the next one. And the next prompt is, what is the most terrifying sci-fi antagonist? All right, for this answer, I had it down to two. The first one was going to be the Shrike, okay, from Hyperion. But then I realized, you know what? You could escape the Shrike. You could just go nowhere near Hyperion, and maybe you're not around the Shrike and you're safe. On the other hand, if you are in the Sun Eater universe, you might have a difficult time running away from the Cielson. Yeah, this is a race of some sort of creatures, right, that are world dominators. They are taking over the galaxy. They fly around not in ships, but basically moving planets, so to speak. They are aggressive. They want nothing to do with peace. All they look at humanity as, essentially, is conquerable food. That's right, we are basically food for the Cielson. That terrifies me. I don't want to be taken over by these guys. Christopher Rocchio, I know you've only got one book left. Please don't let the Cielson win. I'm guessing he's not going to make the Cielson win, but please don't make the Cielson win. Terrifying? Absolutely. Do I recommend this series? Of course. Sun Eater, Cielson. Let's move on to the next prompt. And this next category is called the World Building Wing. And the prompt is, which book has the most immersive world building? All right, I could have gone with a lot of different answers here, right? Because world building is sort of Brandon Sanderson's thing, right? I mean, you can make a case that the world building in his books are second to none. Of course, Robert Jordan, behind me, you'll see The Wheel of Time, again, known for the world building. But what I really keyed in on in this part of the prompt is the word immersive. Which world building feels like I'm there the most? And I'm going to go with, this might be a weird one, but I'm going to go with the Red Rising series. I just grabbed Lightbringer because it was the closest to me. But Red Rising by Pierce Brown only takes place in our solar system, yet there are so many locations, from just being on Mars where we get started, kind of underneath the atmosphere, under the ground, we feel like we're there. Then we go to the moon and we feel like we're on the moon. There are different prisons that we go to. Some of them are actually underwater. And again, it kind of feels like we're there. Then we're out beyond the asteroid belt, right behind Jupiter and Saturn and all these, extrasolar planetary bodies that are way the heck out there. Pierce Brown does an amazing job of making us feel very immersed in whichever setting we happen to be in that particular chapter or that particular book. So I'm going to go with Red Rising has, for me, the most immersive, and again, that's the word I want to stress here, immersive world building of the bunch. Let's move on to the next category. And the next category is called Character Classification. And our prompt is going to be, who is the best chaotic neutral character? Okay, so for classification, what I mean by that is based on the Dungeons & Dragons alignment system, where we have people on the spectrum of lawful and chaotic and good and evil, and neutral is right in the middle, true neutral. But my question is, who is the most neutral in a chaotic type of way? The first person that came to mind in this is Nakoma Koska from the First Law universe by Joe Abercrombie. I happen to be holding up Best Served Cold because he's in the book. I hope that's not a spoiler for you, but whenever he comes on the page, holy cow, is he fun. You don't know what he's going to do. You don't know whose side he's going to be on. He's a leader of a mercenary band for hire. He also likes to drink a lot, and that informs his decision making constantly. But one thing you do know, Nakoma Koska is going to always do what's best for Nakoma Koska. And that might be good. It might be bad. It might be all over the place. But you know one thing, it's going to be chaotic. That's my answer for that prompt. Let's move on to the next category. And the next category is called Underrated Gems. The prompt is, What is the most underrated science fiction or fantasy book or series? Okay, for this one, of course, there are so many to pick from. I'm going to pick one that I already mentioned a little bit earlier in the video today because I want more of you guys to read it, so I have more of you guys to talk about it with, and that is going to be Benedict Jacka's Alex Verus universe. There are 12 books. They are finished. It's a completed series. You don't need to wait anymore. It's already all there for you. Now, this is urban fantasy. It takes place mostly in London, but they do go quite around the world from time to time in various books. I absolutely love this series, both because I find Alex Verus as a character to be entirely relatable. I like the fact that the cast of characters is not overwhelming. It's very tight. I like the fact that basically all of our adventures really do revolve around Alex Verus in the same sense that in the Dresden Files, everything sort of does revolve around Harry Dresden. But there are some amazing side characters. And I'm going to say that the main antagonist in this series, Richard Drock, almost got my best fantasy antagonist in the earlier question in this particular Lorekeeper's library tag because he's so excellent. Now, if you've not read it, you don't know what I'm talking about. So what's the answer there? Go read Alex Verus. Get back to me and let me know in the comments what you think of that series. Let's move on to the next category. Our next category is called Reading Challenges. And the prompt is, what is the most challenging fantasy book you've ever read? Okay, so this came down to 2 books, and I've read them both in the last couple of years. The one that didn't make it was Cloud Atlas. Now, I know I said fantasy books, but I'm kind of throwing science fiction and fantasy all in the same category here. I found that to be challenging, mostly because of the structure, and I've done other videos that talk about that. But when it comes to a challenging read, I was hard-pressed to find something more challenging than Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun. Not necessarily because I didn't understand what was going on, and in many places I certainly did not, like most first-time readers, but the language that Gene Wolfe uses is entirely archaic at times. In fact, I'm going to say on every single page of Book of the New Sun, I was so glad that I had my Kindle with me because I would just press the button and the definition of the word would come up. Because Gene Wolfe invented no words at all that are kind of in the fantastical or in the sci-fi realm. Every single word he uses in the Book of the New Sun is a real word. Unfortunately for the reader, maybe fortunately if you like learning new vocabulary words, these have fallen out of date or fallen out of, favor over the last couple of thousand years. So I would hit a button and go, oh, so that's a guy that holds a spear. And they probably haven't used that word for that in a couple of thousand years. So in terms of challenge level, Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun, both grammatically speaking, like I don't know what this word means. To me, that's a challenge. But also, of course, you've heard about the plot being a little bit out there, and you've heard about Severi and the torture being an unreliable narrator, which I don't know if I buy into that too much, but that's a whole nother video. Anyway, long answer to a quick question. The most challenging book I've ever read, and yes, I absolutely recommend it to all of you, Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. Let's move to the next category. Okay, and the next category is called Library Recommendations. And the prompt is, recommend a fantasy book for beginners. Okay, I'm going to answer this question in 2 ways. For beginner readers that are younger, right, maybe middle grade age, you knew this was coming up. We're going to talk about Tana. We're going to talk about The Tenacious Tale of Tana the Tender Sword by Dewey Conway and Bill Adams. This was my semi-finalist for Spiff Box. This is actually Team Philip Chase's finalist for Spiff Box. If you don't know what that is, go back into the BellTube catalog and you're going to find it quite readily. The Tenacious Tale of Tana the Tender Sword. Perfect for young readers. This is exactly where I would start them. I think it has more modern sensibilities and more modern language than something like The Hobbit, so I would go for this one right off the rip. Let's talk about for adults for a second. So where would I recommend somebody start in fantasy? This is going to be a little bit of a different answer. I know a lot of people say let's start people at Mistborn or start with the classics like Lord of the Rings. I think one of the big reasons people don't get into fantasy is purely because they get intimidated by the world building. So for me to recommend a series for a new fantasy reader that's at an adult level, I'm going to say The Dresden Files because it's urban fantasy. We are set in Chicago. We are not asking our readers, particularly in the first probably 5, 6, 7 books of The Dresden Files, we're not asking them to learn these crazy locations or these made up languages or these, races and creatures and species and all of that. Yes, we do get that in the Dresden Files, but not right off the bat. We have a wizard for hire who's advertising in a Chicago newspaper. We have local law enforcement. We have things that people are already very familiar with. Now we're putting a magical spin on it, and I hope that way they get more into the fantastical, more into wanting to read more fantasy, more sci-fi, because we're not making the bridge so huge for somebody to cross right off the bat. You would be amazed how many people I say, hey, why don't you go read this book or that book in fantasy? And I go, oh, you know what? I don't want to learn about different planets, and I don't these languages and the species. It is a real thing. And if you are somebody that is trying to recommend to a friend or family member, maybe start with urban fantasy. It gives them a common starting place of the familiar rather than just launching them into a world that they're so unfamiliar with, they set the book down and we've lost them temporarily, I hope, as readers. Anyways, that's my answer there. Let's do a one for the road. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we are talking about creativity today. So why did I make up a new book tag? Why are we doing the Lorekeeper's Library book tag? Because it's fun for me, and this is what brings me joy. And my challenge for everybody today, it's a really, really quick one for the road, and don't worry, we are going to tag some people to do this at the end of the video. But I just feel like creativity as a whole gives us the true sense of living that really nothing else on the earth that we're aware of has the ability to do. So the challenge that I just mentioned, take some time today. I don't even care if it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and do something creative. Make a doodle, write a 3-sentence poem, just make up a melody in your head and sing it. Something that exercises the creative juices in your body. I think you're going to find that a lot of the negativity that swirls around us as a people will vaporize a bit the more time we spend in our creativity and bringing something brand new to the world that only you have the power to bring into it. All right, so that's the one for the road. Let's talk about tags. All right, so the one person that I know that is so glad that I am bringing tags back to BooKTube is the one and only Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And I just recently did a tag that both he and Joanna from Joanna Reads did called the Betrayal book tag. So I tag you, Alan, and I tag you, Joanna. If you want to do this tag together like you did your last one, I bet you your viewers would absolutely love that, or do it individually. Another booktuber I'm tagging, absolutely the wizard himself, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. You are hereby tagged. My close, dear Minnesotan friend Tori from Tori Talks, you are hereby tagged. Now, if I could only tag one more person, you guys, if I had to think of somebody that we would tag that I've never talked about on this channel before, who would it be? I don't know. Let's go with my brother in the South, John Minton from Talking Story. John Minton, you are hereby tagged. Now, Jacob, I apologize for not tagging you, but you have to have read more than 4 books. I'm so sorry. You have to have read more than 4 books to qualify for this. John, you're tagged. You're it. Everybody, have an awesome day. Stay positive. And of course, here's your fortune.